Wow. That was just incredible. Please, another round of applause for our first ever global advocate for peace, Mariam Bukhar Hassan. Thank you so much, Mariam, for that beautiful and profound contribution to our official opening ceremony of Unstoppable Africa 2025. Now for our next session, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to need your interpretation kits because it's going to be in Portuguese. So if you haven't gotten them yet, please grab them. You can find them at the back of the room. So basically what we heard from Mariam perfectly sets the stage for what comes next. And that is a high-level conversation that gets straight to the heart of our theme. How does Africa shape the market? Especially at this time in the world where there's so much turmoil, shifting alliances, and so on. In a few minutes, we'll have an extraordinary panel of heads of states and business leaders exploring how Africa translates vision into action and also opportunity. But first, to help set the scene, we are truly honored to introduce a fireside chat moderated by my friend, Ms. Hariana Veras, Chief White House Correspondent for Africa, and her guest is the President of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency João Lorenzo. Please give him a warm welcome. Ariana.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My guest is already coming. O meu convidado já vem. Bom dia, excelências. Bom dia, caros convidados. Senhor Presidente da República de Angola, João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço. Bom dia, Senhor Presidente. Sim, pode ser aqui, por favor. Sim. Este para o Senhor Presidente.
Ok, muito obrigado.
Por favor. Uma vez mais, bom dia. Eu vou falar em português. A plateia está muito bonita. Verdadeiramente, a África é imparável. Aliás, a África é o continente do futuro. É para mim uma honra muito grande ter a oportunidade de conversar com Sua Excelência, o Presidente da República de Angola, que é também o Presidente em exercício da União Africana. Senhor Presidente, uma vez mais, bom dia e bem-vindo.
Muito bom dia, Ariane. Muito obrigado pela oportunidade.
Sim. Obrigada a nós. Nós vamos então dar início à nossa conversa. Vai haver outras conversas aqui no stage, mas eu vou começar agora com o Senhor Presidente. Senhor Presidente, sabemos que para a África continuar a desenvolver é preciso haver grandes projetos que venham contribuir para o desenvolvimento do continente. Na sua opinião, como é que projetos estruturantes, como por exemplo o corredor do Lubito, pode impulsionar a integração regional e posicionar Angola como um hub estratégico no mercado africano,
as a strategic hub in the African market, Mr. President. So thank you, Ariana, for the question. The free trade zone in the continental Africa is a well-conceived project, and it is underway. But we have found a major barrier, that is the connection between the many countries that are part of our continent. In order to promote trade, there must be the fluid circulation of people and goods by means of the roads and highways and railways as well, ports and airports as well. Therefore, one of the key difficulties for the success of the free trade zone in Africa has been the scarcity of important infrastructure so that logistics may flow freely between the many countries. The Lubito corridor, it's not a single corridor, but it's one of the pieces of infrastructure that could really help us to lower the barriers. The Lubito corridor will connect two different oceans, the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans. Crossing the African continent, the Lubito corridor will serve the region countries, but also Central Africa and Eastern Africa countries. And
há
the
uma
Lobito
simples linha
corridor
férrea
is
e há
not
dois portos,
simply
um no
limited to
Atlântico,
a
o de Lobito,
railway
e
and
outro
two
no
ports,
Índico,
one on the
o de Dar
Atlantic
es
and
Salaam.
another one on
Portanto, ele
the
tem a ver
Indic
com
Ocean.
toda uma
Well, this
economia que
corridor
se
has to
vai
do with an
desenvolver ao
entire
longo desse
economic
mesmo
scenario
corredor.
that will develop along this
Oportunidades de
very corridor.
investimento que o setor
There'll
privado deve
be
aproveitar
investment
para
opportunities that should be
produzir, para
seized by the
transformar, para
private sector
industrializar,
so that they can
para o
produce,
consumo dos próprios
transform,
países africanos e,
industrialize,
obviamente,
promote the
também
consumption of the
aproveitar
African
esse mesmo
countries
corredor
themselves,
para
and
a
also seize the
exportação desses
opportunity
produtos
of this
para
very
o resto do
corridor
mundo.
to export
Este
products for the rest
corredor
of the world.
vai
So, this
poupar
corridor
quilómetros
will
de viagem
spare
para
kilometers and
a
kilometers of
navegação
displacement
internacional,
travels
portanto, na ligação entre
in
a
terms of
Ásia, a
international
Europa e o
navigation. The
continente
connection
americano
between Asia,
vão-se
Europe,
poupar
and the
milhares
American
de
continent will
quilómetros,
be able to spare and
vai-se
reduce
poupar tempo de
thousands and
viagem,
thousands of
e
kilometers in
tempo é
terms of
dinheiro, como se
displacement.
costuma dizer.
Travel time will be reduced, and
Portanto,
time is money, as we always say, right?
nós vemos este corredor
Therefore,
como
we
algo,
see the
como uma oportunidade que
corridor
todos os
as
investidores
an opportunity
devem
that all
aproveitar, na certeza de
investors
que todos
should seize.
sairão a ganhar. Embora o
I'm
Lobito
certain that
seja uma
all
cidade que esteja
stand to gain.
em
Lobito
Angola, o
is a
corredor de
city that is
Lobito
located in
não surge
Angola,
apenas
but the
para
Lobito
beneficiar a
corridor
economia angolana. Antes,
will
pelo
not
contrário, vai
emerge to
beneficiar a
benefit our
economia
economy
africana
in Angola
e,
only. It will
obviamente,
benefit
também
the
a economia
African
mundial.
economy
Muito
as
obrigada,
well,
Sr.
and therefore the
Presidente.
global
Como acabaram de
economy.
ouvir, o
Thank you,
corredor do Lubito é
Mr.
projeto
President. As you
ambicioso
heard, the
que
Lobito
vai
corridor
beneficiar,
is
como o Sr.
quite a
Presidente disse, não
bold
só uma
project.
região
As
em
Mr.
África, mas
President
muitos
said, it will
países
benefit
que
not
se
only a
unirem
single
a este
region in
magnífico
Africa, but
projeto.
so many other
Continuando, Sr.
countries that can
Presidente,
join this
sabemos também que
magnificent
para haver
project. Mr.
desenvolvimento
President, we
no
know
nosso
that in order
continente,
to promote
devemos ter
development
paz e
in our
estabilidade nos
country,
países
we
africanos.
must have
De que modo
peace
é que
and
iniciativas
stability in
continentais em
African
prol da
countries.
paz e
What
investimento,
are
Sr.
the
Presidente,
continental
podem
initiatives
fortalecer
for
a
peace
posição de
and
África
investment,
como
and
protagonista nos
how
mercados
can they
emergentes?
strengthen the position of Africa as a
O
protagonist in
mundo
the emerging
está a
markets?
atravessar momento
Oh, well, the
difícil,
world is crossing a
com
very
conjunto
difficult
de
moment
crises,
with
crise
a whole set of
energética,
crises.
crise alimentar,
We have the energy crisis, the
e
food
o
crisis,
mundo deve ter consciência de que para a solução
and the
destas
world
duas
should be
crises
aware that
deve
in order to
contar
tackle both
necessariamente
of these
com o
crises,
contributo do nosso
we have
continente,
to
com o
rely on the
contributo da África.
contribution of
A
our
África tem
African
grande
continent.
potencial para produzir
Africa
muito
has
mais
a
energia do que
major
produz,
potential to produce much more
com a
energy than
particularidade
it
de que
produces
será,
today.
na maioria dos
And
casos, energia limpa, uma
most
vez que o
often, we're going to
continente
produce
tem
clean energy
abundantes rios
because we have
de
abundant
grande
sources,
caudal,
we
portanto
have
podem ser
abundant
construídas
rivers, high
muito
volume
mais
rivers.
barragens
Therefore,
hidroelétricas para a
we
produção de
can
energia
build
hidroelétrica.
hydropower plants to
O
provide
continente
electricity.
tem sol em abundância que se está a
The continent
desperdiçar
has sun
e
in
que,
abundance.
a
We
exemplo
waste
do que
the
já vem
sunlight,
acontecendo em alguns
actually.
países africanos,
And for the sake of
como em
example, as we
Marrocos,
see in
noutros
some
países
African
do
countries,
norte da
as
África,
in
em Angola
Morocco or
mesmo,
in some other
o
northern
investimento na
African
energia
countries, in
fotovoltaica com
Angola.
painéis
So we
solares
have to invest
já é uma
in
realidade e
photovoltaic
tem um
energy with
potencial
the
grande
solar
em
panels,
crescer
and
muito
that's a
mais.
reality, and that brings a
Portanto,
great potential to
para
further
além de que
expand.
a
Therefore,
existência de minerais raros no nosso
we also
continente
have the
contribui
rare minerals
para a
that are
produção
available in our continent, and
de
this will
baterias, não
contribute to
apenas
the
para as
production of
viaturas,
batteries,
como para outros
not only
fins.
for vehicles,
Portanto,
but
em termos de
batteries with
energia,
other
o
purposes.
mundo deve
So,
contar bastante com a África.
energy-wise, the world
Com
should really
relação
rely
à
on
crise
Africa.
alimentar, igualmente, o
About
potencial é
the
grande em
food
África de
crisis, we
produzirmos
have a
bastante
huge potential in Africa.
alimentos
In
para alimentar
Africa,
o
we
próprio
produce a
continente
great deal
e
of
para
food items
alimentar
to
parte,
feed our
parte
own
do mundo.
continent, but we
Mas,
can also
para
feed
que
the
a África
world.
esteja em condições
In
de
order
dar
to
esse
enable
contributo ao mundo,
Africa
da
to
resolução
provide
do
this
problema da crise
contribution to the
energética
world,
e
in
alimentar,
order to solve the
tem,
energy and the food
em primeiro
crisis,
lugar, de
first and
cumprir
foremost,
com
we have to,
uma divisa
first
do
and
continente
foremost,
que é o
we have
calar
to work
das
in
armas.
the
Enquanto
continent.
não
We
conseguirmos
have
calar as
to
armas, é
eliminate
evidente
the
que
guns.
não
We have to
podemos
eliminate the
pensar no
weapons.
desenvolvimento
While we
econômico
don't
e
do that, we
social do
cannot
nosso
think
continente.
about the economic and the social
Lamentavelmente,
development of our
estamos a
continent.
caminhar numa direção em que,
Regrettably,
ao invés
we
de
are moving
nos
forward,
aproximarmos da meta do calar
but
das armas, viemos
instead of
conhecendo,
eliminating
lamentavelmente, cada vez
weapons,
mais conflitos,
unfortunately,
conflitos
we've had
bastante
an
sangrentos,
increasing number of
que
conflicts, quite
criam
bloody
enorme
conflicts
instabilidade,
that create
provocam número
instability.
considerável de
And these
mortos, de
conflicts,
feridos,
they take toll on the lives
de
of people.
deslocados internos,
There is a
de
high number of
refugiados
wounded
para outros países
people who are
e
displaced,
que,
people that have to take refuge
obviamente,
in other
não
countries.
permitem, portanto,
And of course,
o desenvolvimento do nosso
this
continente.
will prevent
Costuma-se a
the further
dizer que
development
o
of our
barulho das
continent.
armas
We usually
afugenta o
say that
investimento
the
e, sobretudo, o
sound of
investimento privado.
guns
Nós estamos aqui numa
makes
sala, numa
the
plateia, onde
investment
temos
flee,
essencialmente investidores
especially
privados.
private investment. We have here the
E só
private
com
sector,
paz,
especially in this room.
só com estabilidade
And just with
é
peace
que o
and
investimento
stability
privado, portanto,
can
se
private
pode implantar.
investment
Portanto, nós
flow
temos
into
a
Africa.
obrigação, todos nós,
So we do
africanos,
hold
de,
the
nas nossas
obligation, all of us
agendas,
Africans, we
darmos
do have
uma
the
alta
obligations to
importância e
include this
priorizar
in our agendas. We do have
a
to
resolução dos conflitos
prioritize the
ainda em
resolution of
curso,
the conflicts
nomeadamente
that
no
unfortunately we
norte
still
da
see
África,
in
na região
Africa,
do
especially
Sahel,
in northern Africa, in the
no
Sahel
Sudão, no
region,
Sudão do Sul,
in
na
Sudan, in
República
South
Democrática do
Sudan,
Congo,
in
em
the Democratic
Moçambique, no
Republic
Corno
of
d'África,
Congo,
na
in
Somália.
Mozambique, in
Portanto,
Horn
é
of Africa,
conjunto
and Somalia. So
de conflitos que
unfortunately, it's a whole set of
alguns deles
conflicts that are
estão,
still
no
on the way,
momento, crescendo,
and
outros
some of them
estão
are
muito
ascending right
próximos de serem
now.
resolvidos.
Some
Nós
of them are
precisamos
gaining momentum,
do
and
contributo de
others
todos
are about to be resolved.
para
But we
que,
need everybody's
efetivamente,
contribution
consigamos
to
ultrapassar o mais rápido possível
effectively
este
overcome these
momento
hurdles
difícil que o
as
continente
quickly as
está
possible.
a
It's a difficult
atravessar.
moment that the
Muito
continent is
obrigada,
facing
Sr.
right now.
Presidente. E
Thank you,
voltando à
Mr.
questão do
President.
conflito, Sr.
Now,
Presidente,
going back to
acabou de dizer
the
muito
discussion
bem,
on
para
the
que o
conflict,
continente continue a
you said
prosperar,
it quite well. In order to make
tem de
the
haver paz,
continent
tem de
thrive,
haver
there must be
estabilidade nos nossos
peace.
países.
There must be stability in our
Fala-me pouco, Sr.
countries.
Presidente, do
So can you
empenho de
tell me
Angola na
a bit
resolução de
more
conflitos.
about
Sabemos
Angola's
que,
engagement in
como
settling
Presidente da União
conflicts?
Africana também,
As the
o
President of the
Presidente
African
tem
Union as well,
empenhado Angola, no seu todo,
Mr.
em
President has gearing
resolver
efforts in
ou
Angola
mediar
to
conflitos a
really
nível da África. Até que ponto isso é
tackle and
importante e pode
mediate the
contribuir
African
para a questão do
conflicts.
desenvolvimento do
To what
nosso continente?
extent can you contribute to the settlement
Bom,
of such
o
conflicts and the
histórico
development of
de
the continent?
contribuição para
Well, the history
não apenas a paz, mas
of
comecemos
contributions, not
pela
only to
liberdade
promote
dos povos
peace,
africanos e,
but also to
consequentemente,
promote
para a
the
paz
freedom of the
da
African
África.
peoples,
O histórico de
and
Angola
also
é
to promote
antigo
the peace in
e
Africa. So
remonta
we've had
ainda
a long
aos anos
history in doing that
da
in
luta
Angola.
contra o regime do
It
apartheid
dates
da
back
África do Sul, em
to the
que
days in which we
Angola
fought against the apartheid.
fez grande sacrifício
So
em
Angola made
acolher os
huge
nossos
sacrifices
irmãos
on that
que estavam em
occasion,
luta contra esse
welcoming the
regime do
brothers
apartheid
and
da África do
sisters
Sul.
that were
Como
fighting
consequência
against the
disso,
apartheid in South
a
Africa.
África do Sul foi
So,
forçada,
as a consequence of
depois da
that,
histórica batalha de
South
Cutucanavale em
Africa,
Angola,
uh,
foi forçada a
after the
negociar
battle,
precisamente aqui nesta
they were
cidade de Nova
forced
Iorque,
to negotiate in
os
the city of New
chamados
York.
Acordos
South
de Nova
Africa was
Iorque,
forced to
que
negotiate, and they
levaram
settled the New York
a,
agreements
ao estabelecimento de regime
that
democrático
led
de
to
maioria
the
negra na África
establishment
do
of
Sul
a democratic
e,
regime
logo a seguir,
uh,
portanto,
with the black
a
majority in South
proclamação da
Africa,
independência da Namíbia.
followed by the proclamation of independence in
Isto,
Namibia.
no fundo, tem a ver com,
So deep down,
portanto, o que nós estamos a fazer nos dias de
this
hoje é
has to
apenas
do
uma
with our actions
consequência
today.
do que acabei de dizer.
And it's just a consequence of
Angola
what I've just
contribuiu
mentioned.
de alguma
Angola
forma para a
contributed
estabilização da situação na
to
República
stabilizing
Centro-Africana.
the situation
Hoje a
in
República
the
Centro-Africana está bem melhor do que estava
Central Republic of Africa. Today they're doing
5, 6
much
anos
better
atrás,
than
quando
they were
os
5 or
grupos
6 years
rebeldes se
ago,
encontravam às
because
portas
at the
de
time
Bangui.
They were at the Bangis rule, and we've contributed to normalizing the relations between two neighboring countries, that is Rwanda and Uganda. We've also contributed, although we have not finished yet, our work to normalize the relations between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, so that this could lead to the end of the conflict in Congo, in the eastern side of the Democratic Republic of Congo. But our hope is that this conflict will come to an end. The Great Lakes region has major economic, touristic potential. Therefore, the continent is losing a major opportunity in further developing such region. That's why we were all invited to contribute and to somehow help in the conflict. Not only both countries, but also the internal groups involved in the conflict, so that they can actually put an end to such conflict. The conflict has been going on for decades. They should really consider the development of the giant that is the Republic of Congo, that has all means to work fine and to be one of the greatest economic powers, not only in the African region, but also in the entire continent. So we are equally concerned with the situation in Sudan. Somehow, and especially now, as the president of the African Union, we are trying to promote a closer relationship for both parties that are in conflict. We are keeping track, we are surveilling and gearing additional efforts that other countries are making as well, in order to really see whether we can keep Sudan as indivisible, a stable country that can resume the path of development. Thank you, Mr. President. As we've just heard, we must have peace, we must have stability, and that's the true focus of Angola. And it should be something that each African works to attain, so he conclaims all of the African people spread in the world. We all need to play our role so that Africa is unstoppable. Thank you very much, Ms. President. Now we'll continue with the wonderful conference. We'll have additional activities and more conversations here on the stage. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank the audience for listening as well.
Thank you so much, Ariana and President Lorenzo, for that powerful scene setter. Thank you. A round of applause once again to our panelists. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we turn our attention now to our high-level opening panel, a powerhouse conversation that brings together an exceptional lineup of leaders and visionaries to ask the urgent question we're asking at Unstoppable Africa 2025, and that is, how does Africa shape the markets? This is not a conversation about potential. We know that Africa has it in abundance. It's a conversation about power, about strategy, and about action. So I'm truly honored to be moderating this panel, high-level panel. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists to the stage. His Excellency Duma Gideon Boko, President of the Republic of Botswana. Ms. Kuti Manyahanle Dabengwa, CEO of NASPER South Africa. Actually, sir. And His Excellency Sultan Ahmed bin Suleiman, Chairman and CEO of DP World. Please join us on stage, Your Excellency. We're hoping to be joined in just a few minutes by the president of Namibia, who is making her way here, but you know New York City traffic during UNGA week, so we'll keep a seat for her. Thank you all so much for being here today. Let me start with you, Mr. President. Let me start with you, if I can, President Boko. And just looking at the big picture, for decades, Africa has been spoken of as the continent of the future, but this is now 2025. So how do we go from being the promise of tomorrow to being the powerhouse of today? How do we do it today, not in 10 years?
Thank you very much, and let me recognize each and every one of you, and thank you for being part of this unfolding story of a buoyant, of a resurgent, of a resilient Africa. Thank you so very much. We have said many times that Africa is the next frontier. We have said this because Africa has enormous potential in terms of resources. We've said this because we've seen in the dynamism of the young people of the African continent. What Africa has faced a challenge in is a leadership that can leverage on the advantage that the African continent has. Africa now must become a continent of innovation, a continent of beneficiation of its mineral resources, and a continent of industrialization. We must move away from the practice of having our minerals carted raw and exported. We now must beneficiate. We must develop, we must process on the African continent. Of course, this will require skills, it will require partnerships, it will require an injection of financial resources from partners, from the private sector, from business. And this is what Africa must seek to do now. Africa has begun to take the first few faltering steps, if I may call them that, in the direction of ensuring that this happens. We have now put in place the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We are now beginning, and the president of Angola, my brother Lorenzo, spoke to the development of trade corridors. The Lobito corridor is but one. We need to proceed along this line and trajectory and ensure that there are corridors that connect Africa. When we exploit our potential in terms of renewable energy, we need to be able to have infrastructure, interconnectors that are able to transmit the power across the breadth and dimensions of the African continent through all these countries. Right now, as we speak, it is difficult. In fact, it is next to impossible to travel seamlessly and efficiently between these African capitals. Yeah. Sometimes in order to move from Luanda to Gaborone, you have to go all the way to Addis Ababa. We need to address this and make sure that there's connectivity, that there's seamlessness of connection between us. And so the digital trade platform that was inaugurated in Zambia recently also affords opportunity and potential for Africa. And so it seems to me that Africa is well on its way to moving away from a source of raw material for the world into a hub of innovation, a hub of creativity, a hub of industrialization. This is what it's about, and these are not just poetic ornaments. They must translate into action, into concrete deliverables.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for that. And Botswana's diamond story is often cited as an example of value retention, but as you said, you know, we're in 2025, and it's more than just about resource management. It needs market leadership, as you said. Thank you very much for that powerful statement. Ms. Puti, let me come to you and ask you a similar question. What do you see as the most single important shift from your vantage point that needs to happen now, not in 10 years?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to His Excellency and the excellencies in the room. What we need right now is to ensure that our young people have access to digital education. We need to ensure that people have access to online access through jobs, education, etc. We have 600 million people on the African continent who have access to mobile telephony. However, we need to ensure that they're able to play a meaningful role online. The reality is that we, as an African company, we have been able to expand significantly in other parts of the world. In LATAM, we have a food delivery business that's the #1 food delivery business. In India, payments, food delivery through Swiggy and PayU and others. If I look at China through Tencent and other places where we're invested. In South Africa, we have our investment in Takealot, an e-commerce platform, where we've been able to bring on sellers, 15,000 sellers. These are people who would have been selling their products in a street corner somewhere. But by being on our platform, they're able to have their products distributed nationally. And so we need to ensure that our entrepreneurs have access to these platforms. We need to ensure that beyond that, that we're able to support them in them being able to scale up even beyond that. And we need to make sure that our young people are in a position to be able to have employment in these businesses, whether it's through cybersecurity or whatever role it is. And that is why one of the things that we do is to focus on supporting the education of young people in digital education, providing them access to the ability to play different roles online. Because the reality is that when we look forward, we all know that by 2050, 1 in 4 people on planet Earth will be an African. And so if it is to be a productive life as we move forward, we need to make sure that our people are in a position to play a productive role. And so in looking at what we are doing, looking, for instance, at the ABLC, the African Business Leaders Coalition, where we are looking at ensuring that entrepreneurs are able to have a big focus on sustainability, ensuring that we have young people having access to education, having access to all these things are important. And the important thing also with the ABLC is the fact that this is the first time that we have a significant gathering of business people all coming together to focus on climate change, focus on youth development, all of these things that are critical for the development of the African continent. And so, as a digital organization for us, it is about ensuring that our youth are not just there, but they are there to play a productive role as we move forward.
Youth potential and the talent is there, obviously. Thank you so much, Puti. Your Excellency, let me come to you now and bring you into the conversation as we talk about where Africa is now and the potential of it. Of course, DP World operates at the front lines of global trade. So from your vantage point, how is Africa's role in supplying change shifting, and what bold investments do you think the continent needs to make now to become a true logistics powerhouse? His Excellency talked about the AFCTA, of course. It's coming along, some would say slowly. So from your vantage point from the outside, where do you think the shift needs to happen?
Thank you very much. I'm delighted and honored to participate in this amazing gathering. We have been in Africa for over 20 years today. We are in over 50 countries. We have almost 50,000 people working for us. Why did we go to Africa? Because the growth of the market is higher than anywhere in the world. As a logistic and port operator, it's very important for us when we unlock opportunities regarding infrastructure issues. And that's in Africa. A lot of people feel Africa is difficult, but I tell you, in our 20 years experience, what I am very impressed and proud to see is that there are many more enlightened, passionate leaders in the African countries, where today they really drive the business and drive the economy. And this is very important. In the past, we do something, but the leadership is not aware or even part of this. Today, you see leaders. Yesterday I met President of Mozambique, who really gave more ideas of what we are doing and how we do it more. Infrastructure is a problem, but infrastructure needs capital. And capital needs regulation, governance, and all that. Today, in Nigeria alone, we have over 200,000 operations, from manufacturing to distribution. 200,000 point of sales, or 250,000. However, we manufacture, and I was touched by His Excellency comment, Africa produces out of raw materials. It's about time to produce added value. There are products Africa today uses where they are imported from outside. It doesn't look on the name of it that is from that country, but most of it comes, cashew nuts, and you name it. Mm-hmm. So we manufacture today tea for Lipton in Nigeria. We manufacture many of the snacks in Nigeria, many other products. The free trade agreement is something that really we are hoping for to bring changes. When you talk about regulations, today, as it stands, you can import something from Europe to Africa or to a country in Africa faster than from the neighbor because of the regulations. And you see, you talk about two things. You could talk about infrastructure, meaning roads and all that, and you talk about other issues regarding regulation, paperwork. We should be speaking the same language when it comes to customs procedures. And we are hoping with the African Trade Agreement, this will happen. Because we believe the African Trade Agreement will bring almost 40 million people out of poverty. So a lot of people, when I meet, and maybe many even leaders in Africa, they all want to say, let's build a port, let's build a port. The port will give a job to maybe a few hundred people, but the manufacturing will give more. Manufacturing gives more jobs. I tell you, I come from Dubai, where we started a free zone in Jebel Ali in about 40 years ago. The free zone today gives 42% GDP in Dubai, creates 500,000 jobs for a city of 4 million people. You can imagine the multiplier effect of that in Africa. And so we look at countries like Ethiopia, where they have a huge demand, they have huge exports. A good example, I tell you, is Rwanda, where we set up in Kigali a distribution center. And we chose Kigali because it's central to Central Africa if we want to reach. The issue, they are far from the port. So Dar es Salaam or Mombasa is about almost $10,000 a container. We set up there and we managed to shorten the time from 14 days to only $2,800 to $3,000 a container, just by looking at the system and improving it. Today, we have a free zone in between Kigali and, for example, Tanzania. In Botswana, we have a big distribution for fast-moving items. In Namibia, we have just opened also a facility for distribution. We distribute cargo between Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Mozambique in our facility. So we see great opportunity. We believe that infrastructure can be solvable. The problem is private and public partnership.
Okay, so let me put that question to President Boko. His Excellency Surayam mentioned some of the issues, even though they've expanded on the African continent and are able to move perhaps more freely than they did a couple of decades ago. Infrastructure remains one of the biggest obstacles. You talked about the AfCFTA, Mr. President, which is a game changer, but some would say, again, progress has been slow. So what concrete steps should Botswana and other African countries be taking right now to remove the bureaucratic, but also infrastructural bottlenecks that's strangling right now intra-African trade? Inter-African trade is not at the level where we want it to be. How do we fix that? Is it regulation? It's not just about, as His Excellency said, infrastructure, but there's also the issue of regulation, perhaps, and governance as well.
Thank you very much. It is indeed a question of regulation, and regulation begins with harmonized systems, harmonized pieces of legislation, harmonized frameworks that enable trade to flow seamlessly, between African states themselves, but also it involves ensuring that we all collectively focus on infrastructure that brings us together, that connects. And as I indicated, the Lobito corridor is one. There are many opportunities for such flows of trade to take place. We need durable, solid partnerships between governments and the private sector. We need to facilitate this collaboration between the governments and private sector to ensure that businesses are facilitated quickly, they are facilitated effectively. We've seen instances where it takes an inordinate amount of time for decisions to be made, for investable resources like land to be availed for investment. So it's going to be very critical for African governments to ensure that there's efficiency, there's speed, there's agility in opening up these opportunities for trade and bringing on board the private sector as well to play its part. I believe most of the developments, especially in infrastructure, will have to be financed by and managed competently and effectively by the private sector. And we need to embrace this.
Let me get your thoughts on that, Puti. I mean, NASA is one of Africa's most successful homegrown companies. So how do we strengthen that partnership and that collaboration between the public and private that the President was talking about?
His Excellency is absolutely correct. The private sector has got a big role to play in terms of ensuring that we have that convergence between the public sector, private sector, unlocking the growth on the African continent. And from my perspective, that needs to achieve, we need to be able to achieve that online. So what we need to do is to ensure that we have connectivity across from rural areas to the most, far along places. We need to ensure that we have that connectivity. I'm currently the chairman of the B20's Digital Transformation Task Force, as South Africa is hosting the G20 this year. And so in the B20's DTIF, Digital Transformation Task Force, what we are focused on is firstly connectivity, and then looking at skilling, and then also looking at digital public infrastructure.
Right.
So having the private sector investing in digital public infrastructure, and then also looking at the ethical use of AI. Because as the world is focusing on artificial intelligence, we need to be focusing a lot more of that. But in order for us to be able to do that,
right,
and to be able to continue to leapfrog the systems that we currently have, it will take that partnership between the private sector and the private sector, and we have seen it as being a big enabler.
On AI, let me just ask you that. I mean, everyone's talking about AI right now. How do we as an African continent become creators of AI, not just consumers of it, and not be left behind?
100%. And so it is critical that...
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm so sorry, Puti. Let me welcome Her Excellency, the President of the Republic of Namibia, who has just joined us. Please welcome Madam President to the stage. Her Excellency Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, President of Namibia. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. Please take a seat. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to let you catch your breath, and then I'll come to you in a second. Puti, please continue. I was asking you about artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And how we become not just consumers of it, and as is the case right now to a certain extent, but also the creators, the originators of AI.
Absolutely. It is important that we are real players in terms of AI. And the best way for us to do that is ensuring that we're providing support to our tech entrepreneurs in them being able to develop their businesses, for them to become sellers online, for them to become real players. So whether it's through different products that they're selling online, or whether it's through payments, or whatever it is that they want to be able to provide, let us ensure that they're able to do that. And so for us to be able to do that, it requires us, from a financing perspective, and also in terms of support for these entrepreneurs to be there for them. Because at the end of the day, it is about entrepreneurs from those particular environments. As a business, when we go into any part of the world, and we're in about 100 markets, we don't go there and play a role ourselves. We support the tech entrepreneurs there, and we grow with those tech entrepreneurs. So we need to see those tech entrepreneurs in Botswana, in Namibia, in other places where we can go in, back them, and be able to see them being able to escalate and grow further. Because that is what it's about. And it is about being able to have that convergence between the mobile telephony access that we currently have and access to the internet, through ensuring that our people are not just having, you know, phones that can only give them a limited access to the internet and just telephony only, but that they have access to the internet. When you look at China today has access to the internet for every single person. And so we need to be making sure that our people are also able to have access online to be able to be as effective as they possibly can.
Thank you so much, Buti. Madam President, thank you so much for being here with us today. We've been talking about how the African continent shaped the markets, not today, not in 10 years, but today. As we see this shift around the world, we're talking about tariffs, there's a shift in alliances as well. What do you see as the most important step that we need to take as a continent today in order to be not just a follower, but a leader now in shaping these global markets?
Thank you very much. I noted that the discussion has started, and many things might have been said, and I might repeat or not necessarily maybe address the issue, as they were also, I understand, introductory statements. But first, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be one of the panelists. Now, coming to your specific question as to what Africa can do in order to push the market, Africa has already done something, and Africa is just in the process to implement what they have already designed, worked on, and decided in order to push the market. And that has come when Africa has adopted and operationalized the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which makes Africa to be one big market. And that big market is not just a market to receive, but it's a market to produce. Now, with Africa agreeing and working on the value chain within the African continent, it is positioning herself to become the hub for goods and service production. Yeah. It's a common knowledge that Africa is host to some of the critical minor resources, and many of them, if not all, are important in the area of technology, but with reference to communication technology. Now Africa working together as a team and work on those critical minerals, add the value to them, then it will be an attraction for the world to relocate their operations so that Africa's natural resources should not continue to leave the continent unprocessed. And then in that way, they are shaping the market. Indeed. And they will become a world-class market continent.
Yeah, we have talked about that, Madam President. A round of applause, please. Let me just pick up on one more thing you've said there. Namibia, your country specifically, is becoming a global hub for green energy, hydrogen and renewable energy right now. how can Africa take ownership of this clean energy future instead of once again becoming just an exporter, as we've said, of these raw energy resources? How do we take ownership and move forward, especially when it comes to clean energy?
Yeah, earlier on, I talked about Africa's natural resources, and I referred to minerals. But Africa is one continent that is also blessed with sunshine, and in some parts, very good wind. And these are the resources that Africa can use in terms of generating energy, which is clean energy. But we have also to know that being where we are as a continent, in terms of development, as much as we become the lead in the clean energy, we need really to have a fair transition to the clean energy, because there are quite many areas that we still have to develop our economies, and with the clean energy still at the initial stage, that a lot of studies still is required for it to feed the industries. Africa will still need to depend on the conventional energy that will take us to clean energy. To mention, when you talk about clean energy, it does not just come in a way that there is no other energy that has to be used for you to produce that clean energy. Now, with the green hydrogen, hydrogen, we all know that is a product that has been in the market for a long time, only that it was being produced through conventional energy.
Right.
And the green hydrogen is only telling us that we should now use the clean energy, which is now the solar, the wind, and to a certain extent the wave, in order to produce that hydrogen.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just part of the package for the development that we are looking for in the continent.
Understood. Thank you so much, Madam President, for that. Your Excellency, Sulayem, let me come back to you on something you said earlier about capital, and that is, how do we attract those long-term investments on the African continent? Global investors often see Africa through, a lens, the risk lens, if you will. And so based on your experience, I wanted to ask you perhaps what stories and examples should be highlighted differently in order to attract these long-term investments into African markets.
Thank you very much. In the last 2 decades, we invested $3 billion. And in the next 5 years, we're going to save another $3 billion. That's how much we believe in the economy in Africa. And I tell you, something interesting happened today. There is a big window of opportunity for manufacturing in Africa for a few reasons I will mention. About our investment, as we speak now, we're investing $1 billion in Senegal in a new port after 20 years of operation. We're building a big port in Banana in DRC also, which will hopefully open in about 12 months. We invested even in Somaliland, a big port, which is working over $500 million. Why are we investing this? To add infrastructure, but most importantly, we want to develop industrial parks. Now, all of us know the Far East is the factory of the world. Everything came from Far East. When COVID came, it changed everything. The Far East stopped, and the supply stopped. Now, you got two things. The supply chain have been proven to be very fragile. A small incident in Suez Canal, when a ship stranded, for 40 hours, delayed cargo by almost 4 months. During COVID, everything stopped. Yeah. And that tells you that the supply chain is not resilient. Trade is resilient. Trade will always find its way. Africa has trade. And I look at trade, it's like water comes from the mountain. No matter how many things you put in front of it or dams, it will eventually come. So we need to be prepared with industrial parks. The Far East is facing two problems. First of all, supply chain cannot handle it. Whatever the Far East was producing before COVID, today they cannot even supply what haven't been produced, and they can't supply even the future. That means we keep hearing the term nearshoring, which we heard it in the 2014. And what the nearshoring means, that it doesn't make sense to produce something thousands of miles for a consumer thousands of miles away. We should produce in the consumer market, and that's what we need to do today. The window of opportunity is, it is closer. If you look at Africa, wherever you look at, it's closer to Americas, closer to Europe. So there's no sense of producing something outside. The second issue in the Far East is the cost of production become very high. We have a business in China 20 years ago, and every year our costs increased by 20%. There's not enough people today to do that. So I believe industrial parks in locations close to the agriculture areas, close to routes, will be very important. When I mentioned today, you mentioned the Lobito corridor, which is through Angola. That's interesting. Yesterday I was speaking to President of Mozambique about the Nacala corridor, which could link to that, linking the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. It's very interesting. Today from Banana, we can actually send cargo from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean, through the River Congo, through the lake, through many other ways. And so the window opportunity is more industrial parks. We're building a big one today in Senegal. We're building a big one in Congo. We have one we are building one also in Tanzania and many parts of Africa. So this is where we have to look at. Capital will come. People will invest. Okay? Money, we were able to fund. You know, in a place like Somaliland, which doesn't have even recognition worldwide, right. We were able to invest, and a big British financial institution invested alongside us.
Your Excellency, you say capital will come, and I want to ask President Boko about this. When and how? How do you see this capital coming, Mr. President?
First, there has to be something of a reconceptualization of the rules that regulate the flow of capital. We know for a fact that borrowing and or financing the African continent is extremely expensive, unduly so, disproportionately so, especially if we take into account the fact that prospects for default in relation to these African economies are much lower than other parts of the world, as a matter of fact. And so we need to approach the issue of mobilization of finance slightly differently and appreciate that it would serve the world economic agenda better if Africa was availed affordable finance. And this is something we need to deal with. The second is that it takes entities such as DP World, which have shown so much faith and confidence in investing in Africa, because it debunks certain myths, misconceptions, certain presuppositions about the African continent. And so when we hear real life examples given by the likes of DP World that are actively involved in Africa and that have positive stories to tell about Africa, we believe that others will be enthused and encouraged to come and participate in Africa. And so capital must find its way into Africa because it faces the best prospects of improving the lives and livelihoods of real people and also getting returns on whatever investments are brought. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Puti, your thoughts about that. How does capital find its way into Africa to improve the lives of the young people that you're talking about, that youth potential that exists on the continent?
The capital is there in Africa. That's the reality. It is about ensuring that that capital is invested on the African continent. And to ensure that capital is invested on the African continent and not and not so much in other markets. We need to ensure that governments and private sectors are working together to create a conducive environment. So when we look at regulations in whatever sector, it needs to be creating an environment where it is conducive towards investment. And so that is one area. And then there are a number of other issues, but what we need primarily is a closer relationship between the private sector and government. And then we need to just deal with a number of issues which are really articulated very much in the African, the AFCT. We have a lot of, work that has been done to ensure that we are dealing with a lot of the challenges that we face as the African continent. But the reality is that it is about implementing a lot of this.
So Puti, if you had one urgent piece of advice to policymakers, what would it be? The most urgent reform that they need to unleash Africa's private sector, as we've said, as a global market shaper. What would that advice be? I'm asking you because we're almost coming to the end of our conversation, and I want to ask everyone what the single recommendation is as we leave this panel today.
Create an environment in your country where tech entrepreneurs can be able to develop their businesses without constraints, be able to do so as people of that country, and do so in a manner that doesn't limit them, so that they're able to scale their businesses beyond. And then you will have the ability to attract the capital that you need, because foreign capital comes in to markets where it can grow. At the end of the day, all of us with capital have investors to account to. And so what we are looking for is the ability to grow the capital that we have. And so just create the environment for us to come in without a whole host of regulations, so that we can be able to do that, push the businesses, and then once you have significant businesses, then you can be able to regulate, because you have big players and you have a reason to be able to do so.
Madam President, I'll ask you for your recommendation as we conclude our conversation today, about one piece of advice you would have for everyone here today, the investors, the leaders, the private sector and so on how to make Africa the leader of markets today. What would it be? And also, I wanted to ask you, as one of the few female heads of state on the African continent, what role must women and young people play in this leadership, in shaping Africa's markets?
Maybe I will start with your last question.
Okay.
As to the role the young women and women in Africa, including African leaders, can play. African young women and women need to intensify the trade role they have played in the continent over the years, and to bring it to match with the current world trade order, for them to make a meaningful contribution to the trade within the continent and beyond. As you know, historically, if you go back to the African history, you will find the role women have played in trade. Well known in some corners as market women. That is trade. So it just needs to be brought into dealing with the global trade in the context of widening women participation in the economy. Coming now to the question as to what advice, I can say what is required is that we need a fair and balanced international financial system that should not discriminate between Africa and the other continent in the globe. And then also, we need fair trade rules. They should not be rules which are meant to put Africa on the bottom of the ladder, but we need world trade rules that is to benefit all the citizens of the world, including Africa, thus enable our continent to play its role in the world economic order.
Thank you so much, Madam President. In 30 seconds, Your Excellency, if you can. Thank you. The microphone, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to mention also the social responsibility of foreign companies in Africa, and they should. And I want to share just two things we did in Africa, which I feel
very briefly.
Very happy with it. There is a program called Solar Mamas. It's basically a program where they train women of 50 and over who already have children who are working into new experiences. And so we sponsored that in Senegal, where we have bought a building and we bring these elder women from hundreds or maybe 1,000 kilometers away from the city for 3 months to teach them how to assemble and create solar power from solar panels. We basically donate this and train them at our cost. And they go back to where they are, and now they have internet, they have electricity, and this is something good. And we are also doing that in other countries. Another thing is, as a company in the port, we have a lot of wires from the cranes where they are have to be thrown away. We are using that instead of throwing it to build the bridges for children in a program called Bridge to Prosperity, where children can't go to school. There is a small stream. We build it there ourselves, with our own people. So I believe that the social part of also responsibility of foreign company should be there, because we need to see how we can help people in where we work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. President, you have the final word. Botswana has long been seen as a model of stability and good governance on the African continent. What advice would you give to your fellow leaders and to all those who are gathered here?
Well, I think words have been spoken across Africa, across the world. It's about time now we translated all these words into action. We need to take our people seriously, the people that we lead, respect them enough to appreciate that what they feel, what they say must be listened to and heeded. And they want peace, they want stable environments, they want predictable environments, they want their livelihoods to be served. They need access to services, access to affordable internet. They need these. They need digitalized economies that bring efficiencies and bring them on board and place them front and center in their country's development agenda. This is what it's about, shorn of all the frills and embellishments. It's about the lives and livelihoods of these people, real people, people of flesh and blood. We need to serve them, serve their interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A round of applause, please, for our panelists. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the President of Austria, the Angolan President and Chairperson of the African Union Commission to please join our panel on stage for a family photo. Please join us. Please.
We're also going to invite Sandao Jambo, the UN Secretary General. She's here somewhere to also join this photo.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Please take your seats. We'll keep going. Please take your seats and we can continue. Your Excellency, how are you?